Today, we're going to talk about all the ways that we can open up new vistas, and not really all the ways, but open up new vistas for our Black students to learn things that we would normally restrict them from learning because we have a very limited view of what urban education can be. We have a very important guest today who can help us open our minds just a little bit about what's possible and even what are the limitations when we think about these new and expansive ways of teaching Black kids. Today on Freedom Friday. It is Freedom Friday, and you are still not free. Welcome, friends and family, to Freedom Friday. It is Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you'll be freer after an hour with me. And not today, not Sharif El-Mekki, who's not with us today because he's out celebrating a very important and culturally relevant holiday for himself and for his family. But we have with us today Dr. William Hayes to talk to us a little bit about how we can open up new vistas for Black education, specifically for Black boys. Dr. Hayes is the Chief Executive Officer of Boys Latin of Philadelphia. He began his career in education in Boston, Massachusetts as a teacher, a college counselor, and an assistant principal. We do know that educating Black children is illegal in many states now, so Dr. Hayes would be a fugitive educator for doing all these things that he wants to do. He was also a turnaround principal in Cleveland, Ohio, something that we have to give a lot of respect to, because we can talk a lot about what should happen in education as people who sit in our chairs and have commentary about it. It's another thing to have to turn around a school and have to be the one that's responsible for results. And that's a totally different ball game. So these are the people that I often like to talk to. He's not only all of that, but he also holds a doctorate. He's a Dr. William Hayes, and not from some Rudy Poot college that you get online in the middle of the night in another country, but from the wonderful Vanderbilt University. He also happens to be leading a school that started in 2007, Boys Latin in West Philadelphia, that is a college prep school with a very unique focus, a focus on Latin and teaching young people Latin and the way that they can access language and access a world of ideas through the understanding of Latin. Good morning, Dr. Hayes. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. How are you?
Do you get that type of setup everywhere you go?
No, and I'm sitting here thinking, oh my, I am a fugitive educator who is born and raised from South Carolina. And started my teaching career in Boston. But that's an interesting tag for me there.
You might be freer than a lot of educators because, like a lot of Black people, you moved north and you are in Philly. So the hotbed of a lot of Black independent schools and Black independent educational thought. So good for you for having made it to a place where you're free. As free as you can be.
As free as can be.
Listen, I know that you lead a school that is for all boys that has a Latin focus, a focus on Latin. And that might not be the most interesting thing that you would want to talk about because you're a couple years into the role of leading that school, that particular school, but you have a lot of ideas about education, experiences in education that go beyond that framing, right? Mm-hmm. But could we just spend a minute there and talk about something that I think is interesting because so many of us would have never really even thought about Latin as a focus for urban Black kids for a couple of reasons. One, the soft bigotry of low expectations, for one. It seems like a really rigorous thing that is usually only available to elite white students who self-select into elite programs in districts where not everybody is getting access to that particular focus. And maybe another reason is it's Latin. It's not Afrocentric, or maybe it is. I don't know. You tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe there were Black Latins. I don't know.
Yeah.
But can we just start there for a second, though? Why Latin? What are some benefits and some of thinking about something that feels so off the normal course for us and for our kids?
I think you point out a great point. It was one of those languages that was typically reserved for the white elite bourgeoisie. And so I think even providing kids access to that language and that opportunity exposes them to something that many of their peers in the local community don't have access to, but many of their classmates that will enter into colleges and universities will also experience. And so for us, it's about exposing kids to the breadth of opportunity that exists, both in the core languages we know in Spanish and French, and the African dialects and languages, but also introducing them to Latin. Latin can be found in many of the core words of the English language. And so many of the words that we speak today find their root in Latin. We also know that the math and the sciences and the legal fields also use Latin words throughout. And so our theory is that students who have access to this particular language and spend a lot of time dissecting it, not only gain access to a variety of fields, but also gain a strong foundation to learn other languages on top of that.
And in practice, so in theory, that's in theory. In practice, how hard a lift is it actually to have this focus? I mean, listen, I might be right down the block from you with another school that doesn't have this focus, and we can focus on something like, I don't know, just think of something that is not all that rigorous. In practice, how successful is this?
Yeah, I think in practice, it has proven to be successful both in students buy-in. So students who haven't traditionally been successful in other subjects have an opportunity to be successful in something they haven't experienced before. I think the other thing is around kids' ability to just think differently. And so Latin is also a subject that requires you to stretch brain muscles that you wouldn't necessarily be stretching in other subject areas. And so for us, it's really around student buy-in and exposure. And there is some level of pride that you take in being one of a few schools that offer it, but also one of a few students that can be enrolled and engaged in it. And so it invites you into various conversations that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. And also, I think students take pride in the fact that it is difficult to work through understanding a new language that isn't common and known to a large number of people. There is pride in being able to navigate that and experience it.
Are you guys doing something different with it in terms of how? Let me think about how to ask this question. So there would be just the standard way of doing classical and Latin education and letting that be it and saying, this is the bar, this is how we do it. We don't care what the kids look like or where they come from. There also would be a way of approaching it of saying, no, we're going to translate this for a different population in a way that makes sense for them, or I don't know how you would approach that. Are you all doing this is classical education the way that it's meant to be and everybody has to rise up to the same bar? Or are you doing the thing of that bar can be met, but there are many different routes to get there?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. I think it's both. It's maintaining the bar for what the standard of the subject and the content is, but also recognizing our students come from a variety of different backgrounds. And so as we would do with any subject, math, science, English, or history, there is a need for teachers to be able to navigate where the student's starting point is, and also support them in getting to the bar without lowering that bar. And so our students do begin taking introduction to Latin, prima lingua, in 6th grade. And then they are scaffolded and growing in that area, 7th and 8th graders. And so we do try to create multiple entry points and multiple opportunities to both differentiate and support learners where they are.
So now I'm not in the classroom. So I don't get to see kids every day. I have some insight by visiting schools and seeing, in the schools, how kids act and how they behave just in general on things. And sometimes you pull out something rigorous and everybody in class kind of goes, oh man, or we doing this again, or, whatever, like a variety of things when rigor comes into the classroom or whatnot.
Yes.
Now you got 100% rigorous program. So how do you keep kids? Well, first of all, let me say that. Just how do you keep kids? Because, at some point, kids might get tired of constant rigor or whatnot. And it's just natural for kids to kind of complain about, why this again? Or this is too rigorous. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I think what we frame as kids getting too tired of rigor is probably more so kids getting too tired of redundancy. And so the goal then is to make sure that particularly in Latin and in other subjects, that it is both interesting and rigorous, that it is applicable and rigorous, that it meets learners where they are, and it is still rigorous. And so for us, it becomes taking the same principles of teaching and learning that we have in other subjects into Latin. And for those kids, it's really, for our students, we try to make sure we contextualize the language that they're learning. And so there's a great deal of history that is taught around the development of the language, the expansion of the language, and how it has impacted the various societies that it was spoken in.
Hmm. So when you think about the sales pitch to parents and to other folks about these schools, what's your experience with being able to sell parents on a school that has such a unique philosophy and also isn't co-ed? That's the other thing we haven't touched on here yet either, is this is a boys school for all boys. And I would love to know more about like some of the upsides and the challenges of all boys and the co-ed part. But what's the sales pitch to local folks, parents, community members about such a unique program?
Yeah, I think it's one to ensure that people know about that particular tenet of the program, but not to isolate it as the only way that we are getting boys to success. And so for us, Latin is as equally important as our rigorous course offerings in math, science, English, and history. It's also as equally important to the brotherhood that we try to build amongst an all boys school. Equally important to the relationships that we require adults to leverage with students, as equal to the college prep mission and the college field trips and exposure opportunities and internship opportunities. And so we are, in many cases, the pitch is a full ecosystem, really driving towards a very specific group, particularly boys of color in the Philadelphia area.
What are your expectations of parents in terms of things like, I complain a lot about homework. I got three young people in schools right now. I swear to God, if y'all keep sending home so much homework and worksheets and what feels oftentimes like, make work or whatnot. But I just realized different schools have different expectations of parents, and maybe that's why we shop around. What are your expectations as an educator of a very rigorous school for parents and for what students do on things like homework?
Yep. So I think the biggest thing is we want parents and students to buy into the mission. So we recognize that we're a very specific school with a very specific mission and focus of students going to college. And that's going to look different than a school that might serve a different mission. And so we equate it to a school for the arts. If you brought your child to a school for the arts, there'll be certain expectations around the types of things that he or she would be expected to do, the types of things that you as a parent will be expected to participate in. And so we want to make sure that our mission is upfront to parents so they're clear on what type of program they're signing up for. And so those expectations will look different than you might see at a different traditional school. The other piece is we want parents to be hyper aware and hyper communicative around where their child is relative to the bar, relative to the things that are coming up in school. And so for us, it's about not only that we are intentional about sending home information, but parents are intentional about communicating back to us, and of course with that work. The other piece is it can be as basic as, please make sure your child shows up and is regularly and supportive and attentive in class. Also, partnering with us, particularly as we think about kids getting exposed and kids participating in various things. That does require parents to sign off on that, to be sure they're doing the extra work of a weekend trip or an after-school program, and really supporting their child throughout the full continuum of the 6-12 experience.
It's funny, Ray Ankrum, who is watching the show, our brother from the 8 Black Hands, and also a troll of the Freedom Friday show oftentimes. Him and I did a show last week where we were talking about another charter school or another school. And in that school, parents get text messages regularly. They get called to school on a regular basis or whatnot. We had this big talk around not every school is for everybody. And I just gave you like as a parent, one of my things I push back on that I don't love. I don't love it that we have kids that sit at home sometimes 2 hours and 3 hours because they have multiple teachers giving them what feels like make work. Like it feels like it's less like, because they're not struggling with it, it's an annoyance because they just have to do it. They have to go through the motions of doing it. And sometimes it feels like it's just a way of teachers testing whether or not kids are getting the thing. But not every school is for everybody. So like if you have different expectations for your parents than another school, then I can move on. But I do want you to settle the bet for me since I got you here and you're so educated, right?
Yes.
So Ray feels like it's punching down to have expectations of parents that are very rigorous and I'm a parent myself. I don't want all that rigor for myself, but I don't mind there being a school where the expectations for parents are really high as higher than I want to be held to account or whatnot. So anyways, I know it's not your job to solve problems for us or whatnot, but call the bet for us as an educator who runs a school about the freedom of schools to be able to put high expectations on parents for what their kids should be doing.
So I think high expectations for parents, I think it really depends upon what view you're coming from and your perspective. So for me, high expectations for parents is really just high support to the best of your ability, given the context that you are in. Do we fully expect and desire and want to engage parents in ongoing communication around their child's pathways and success? Absolutely. Do we want to do so to the detriment of the relationship with the parent? No. And so for me, it becomes about the school determining what is your baseline communication. And so for us, that's about communicating with students' academic success and academic challenge, providing regular communication around what is happening at the school, what is coming up, but to not use communication as a tool to, for lack of a better word, annoy parents to the point at which they don't want to participate or engage, or to indict parents to the point in which they don't feel empowered to support their child in the academic success. And so for me, I think it requires the school to be intentional about communication, to pay attention to the way in which it is being experienced by parents and to respond accordingly. Because ultimately, we're both signing up for the success of the child. And if a communication method or a expectation isn't guaranteeing that, then we aren't fully doing that job.
Yeah, I feel like that was a diplomatic answer. I get it. That was like full of diplomacy. Here's what I'll say about this one piece, and then we can move on, is that there are a good number of things that could go wrong with your child's education. And if you have a Black child, there's even many more things that can go wrong. If you have a child that is ethnically part of an out group, or an out group, not even ethnically, but just an out group period in the United States, there are many ways in which education could go wrong for your child. Many of those ways are ways that things can go wrong within your locus of power. You can control many of the things that could go wrong for your children. There are many of the things that are systemic that you can't immediately control or immediately impact or affect. So those are two different categories of things that could go wrong for your children. When something does go wrong, I hope you do a good job as a parent of knowing which bucket those things are in. If something goes wrong and it was within your bucket and your locus of control to fix for your child, that is a different situation than if something goes wrong for your child and it's within the system's fault, because that requires you to do some external activism, some external fighting. But I think many parents should know that things that go wrong for their children in their schools are fixable or within their ability to affect or impact in some way, in some great way. And they should do all that they can, one, to be educated about what are the things that they should pay attention to that show whether or not their children are succeeding and thriving in school, whether their children are depressed or facing some form of adversity in school, many of the ways that are hidden from us. And more importantly than anything else, the things that are taking your kids off track from reaching their highest potential. There are so many ways to go off track and to be many grade levels behind before someone knows about it or catches it. So I would just say, for parents, beware. But be real about what your role is, what your responsibilities are, what power you have to keep your kids on track and educated, and then deal with the things that are outside of your control. Like the system doesn't love your kid in so many ways. The system particularly doesn't love Black boys, Black girls, racially excluded groups, and other minorities. So be real about that part. As a parent, I'm just going to say that oftentimes we complain about the system, and we should, because the system has a lot going wrong in it. But we need to complain about ourselves sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's about, I would just add this. I think that's the nature of the relationship. It's a very different conversation when I don't know you as a parent and you don't know me as a leader. I think when folks can see something wrong and we can come to the table and both. So I typically start a parent meeting with the first question: what do you want to see happen here? Right. So that we're normed on kind of what this goal and outcome is. And if we're not, If you're trying to see something different than I'm trying to see, then that's where the conversation piece is. And I think from just a space of trust and understanding, then we can have a conversation around, so in this full partnership team of your child, let's talk about who owns what part of this particular problem or challenge. And we can walk away with very clear understanding of what is within my control, what's within your control as a parent, and what will we have the chance to actually, neither of us can do anything about that, and we need to create a best case scenario moving forward. And so in his honest, it feels like a political answer, but that is literally the kind of balanced energy that I come to the conversation with, starting with what do you want to see happen here? And then let's get very clear about whose role it is in each part of this particular problem.
I love that. Raymond Ankrum says, we want Morehouse Hayes. You're giving us Harvard Hayes.
Such a monolithic view of both of those institutions, as if I can't be both things and all things at one time.
You know, this is what I think is interesting too. Let's bring this into the conversation. You and I had a chance to talk while we were at this big ed conference or whatever, about the limitations that we put on Black maleness, Black boyness, Black manness in the United States. And part of that is having really limited creativity about what we think Black people, Black males specifically, can be. The range of things that they can be. So that's why when I started thinking about your school, Boys Latin, I was about to say Black Boys Latin, Boys Latin, you know, I thought, if no other reason that I'm interested in talking to you more, not just about Boys Latin, but it is to say, what are the number of things that would have been a blind spot for me that are even possible for Black boys to care about, be interested in, or whatnot. We think about a very limited worldview of what Black men and Black boys are. And half of that is handed to us by the media and by the powers that be in terms of expectations. So we don't think about Black boys interested in chess and Black boys who are interested in math geek or science geek stuff or whatever. We just don't use that. And then there's many other ways. So my question to you is, as someone who runs a school that is exclusively working with boys, what are we missing as the public in terms of our limitations, like that we don't get to see about Black boys and we should see more? What should we make more visible about our young Black boys?
Yeah, I think for me, it's very personal in that even to the question that Ray posed around, we want the Morehouse version versus the Howard version. I think we, particularly as a society, don't often think about the full breadth of Black boys, Black men, and Black masculinity in general. And so because we don't often get to like have a more nuanced conversation around what that looks like, or have a more nuanced view and perspective of the students in front of us, we don't often build schools that address those nuances. And so being at an all-male school, I think what it presents is an opportunity, because you've, in many cases, homogenized the group, you're able to see the diversity within that group and create experience that speak to all those students on the full continuum of Black boyhood. And so for me, I think those blind spots look like thinking about the students that we would otherwise deem as okay or exceptional, and build communities and programming and support systems around those particular students. I think that particularly in a larger context that include both boys and girls, multiple races and backgrounds and multicultural identifications, there can be a push to just throw everything at the system, and kids kind of left to pick and grab what is most appropriate and what fits. I think this allows us to be much more intentional about showing the range of what it looks like to show up, showing the range of what it looks like in terms of opportunity and access, without limiting that based on any stereotypical view that drives our understanding of Black boys.
When you think about what it takes to run a whole school just for Black boys, just for boys, but you know, we're going to say Black boys because, you know, because of the population that you serve and that you work with, how much of a challenge is it to staff a full school full of people that get the assignment, that understand the assignment?
That is probably the most difficult thing and the most important thing. I think because I carry with me this intention of I always want schools, educators to reflect the students in front of them. Also realizing, particularly at all boys school, while it is important to have Black men in front of them, and that is definitely one of our focuses, it's important they also experience the full range of diverse educators in that. And I think the most challenging piece is it can be quite misleading that our students attend this college prep school where they wear blazers and they wear ties. And in most cases, our students demonstrate high levels of understanding and are pretty polite and wonderful and great and respectful. But I think there's an assumption that when you come to this school, kids aren't dealing with very real challenges. And so there isn't just an expectation that you hold a high bar for their outcomes, but that you hold a high bar for yourself in navigating all the challenges and circumstances they are facing. And also be professional, intentional, and have a certain level of expertise that allows you to take them from where they are and seeing all their needs and driving towards that. And so we believe that you don't have to sacrifice one for the other. And so I think that is a challenge in recruiting staff that think they're going to come and get a cookie cutter kid who is going to follow just because you say follow and do just because you say do, without the need for the rationale that you would provide for another student, without the need for the supports that you would provide in another school. And so we do a lot of, I think, correcting misperceptions around what it means to be at both an all boys school, but also to be at a college prep school for all boys.
Yeah. And the college prep part, I want to come to this college prep part because I don't think college is for everybody. Just kidding. Just kidding. No,
I'm not gonna do that. No, I don't think college is for everyone either. And I think that those who come to Boys Latin have decided that college is for me.
Yeah, I'm joking when I say I don't think college is for everybody, because whether that is a true statement or not, it's not a politically good statement that drives us anywhere good, because the bottom line is we're doing too little to make sure that young people qualify to make the decision whether or not they want to go to college or not. So jumping to, well, it ain't for everybody, often is said by people who are not meaning that for their own kids. They're meaning that for somebody else's kids, because there are entire classes of people that has become popular to say this with, who absolutely 100% of their expectation is that their child is, no, you're going to college. It's just like you're going to do elementary, middle school, high school, and college, and then you're going to go do whatever you want to do in the world. And they'll be the first ones to say, well, college ain't for everybody. So I just think it's a politically wrong statement, even if it's accurate in many cases.
Yeah, I think it's a cop-out in many cases, particularly from a system standpoint. I think a push to say it's not for everyone while looking very clearly at all of the data that suggests that it should be for everyone is one of the greatest pathways to equity and equality and economic outcomes and life prosperity. I think that it just serves to tell the system, well, you couldn't do it for some kids and you couldn't get them college ready. So let's just go ahead and say it isn't for everyone, as opposed to we couldn't get everyone there.
Well, you just made a very firm statement, though. You just said that it's one of the greatest kind of pathways to mobility. So challenge that for a second. I mean, there will be people watching this show who I will know, who will talk to me and say, listen, a college degree doesn't change intergenerational wealth. It doesn't, get rid of systemic racism. It doesn't do a lot of things. So the idea that putting a lot of kids on the path to college changes the nature of America in some way for us isn't true. I know what I think about that, but I'd throw it back to you.
Yeah, I think that it's very easy to take my statement and people will add all the things that support their claim. So in my statement, I say college is a path towards upper mobility, and people will say, well, you got to take out all that debt. I'm not saying that you should go to college if you're going to take out $150,000 worth of debt. And there are paths to get a college education that don't require that. Kids will go into these campuses where they're not seen and heard and understood, and they're experiencing all of these kind of negative social responses. Well, I'm also not saying you should go to a college that's not a good fit for you, right? And so I think that it becomes about pushing back on the assumptions of all the negative things about going to college. And let's look at the core of what the data is saying, that students who graduate with a college education have a greater social network and more cultural capital based on the peers they went to school with. We look at the life expectancy of those who have a college degree as it relates to your access to jobs with healthcare and benefits and vacation days and time to take off for maternity leave and paternity leave. And so we can point to all these ways in which a college education gives you access. We can point to all those ways in which those who have a college degree have better outcomes across the scale, right? And I don't know how you can look at those things and suggest that a student whom I love and want to see the best for, a family, a community that I want to see the best for, there is a path that has data that supports it being a better path, and me not say that. I think where we can begin to make some choices is if I can guarantee that in the 12 years that I've had you in education, that I have in fact prepared you for college. I've given you all the information that shows you why this is a likely pathway. I've done the work of making sure you don't come out with debt, and that you're not in a place that is unsafe emotionally and physically. Why I wouldn't drive you towards that if I actually care. Mm-hmm. And so I think that even in this statement, why is 100% college acceptance BS, right? That's not the goal. I don't think that college acceptance is the goal. College admission isn't the goal. I think that we need to be intentional about sending students to college with an assumption they have all the tools necessary to graduate from college, because we do know that it can be a detriment to go, not finish, to go and not graduate with a skill or a degree that you can use. And so for me, it's about being intentional about when I say college is the best pathway for students, it's the best pathway if we've done the work of preparing them and we've done the work of sending them in a place where they can be successful.
I noticed on your website that your school says that it gets more kids matriculating into college, persisting to college, and graduating college, which is a great goal for them. I wonder about like the way that when we don't work with Black boys every day, the way that we from a distance think that they think, and that we need to teach them things. What is it about college that you think you have to teach them that we on the outside oftentimes? Well, let me be more specific so that people listening to this, we talk about, we had Ian Rowe on Freedom Friday last week, and him and I have similar ideas, but we have different ideas about what Black people actually think and teach their young people. I think we're often taught we have to work hard and we have to work twice as hard. And we get the message from parents and from grandparents and from community members that we have to hustle, that we have to work hard or whatnot. Ian, his point is that we have to teach kids the success sequence. We have to teach them to go to high school, graduate, take any job, don't get pregnant, and you'll be, if you do all those things, your chances of being poor are greatly diminished. So we don't have to teach about anything else. My problem with that is I don't think that our kids and their families are as ignorant to everything in the world as we claim them to be. So like even the importance of college. The majority of people I know that didn't go to college still were told the importance of college. They knew that their family members that did it were having a better life. They just didn't do it themselves, right? Like, or for whatever reason, it wasn't that we had to teach them the importance of this. What do you think about, or not even think about, what is your experience with young people about how much they know about the importance of these things already? And it's not that we have to teach them that, it's just that we have to teach them, period. We have to teach them like the education part of the schooling process.
Yeah, so I think you can't just teach a student about the success sequence, right? That if I do all these things, then I will get this, without teaching them about the opportunities and rules of the system that they're operating in, as well as the unforeseen hidden landmines that are also in that same system, right? And so I want kids to know the path, but I also need them to know that there will be signs and signals within the system suggest you should take a different path, or take a loop, or a turn, or stop here and go a little faster here. And so I think about all the soft skills that students need to know and be able to navigate and have when they are entering into the college space. And so we recognize that students need a base level of understanding and skill and ability as it relates to reading, writing, thinking, mathematics, and critical thinking. But they also need to know how to navigate large systems, how to navigate and advocate for themselves, and to be able to quickly read a room and a system and know where is the opportunity and where is the unsafe, dangerous landmine within that system. And I don't think we do a good job of informing kids of who they are, what that success sequence looks like, but also equip them with a very nuanced understanding of the world around them and the ways in which multiple people and systems are thinking, and both driving to support them, but also driving against them. And I think if we can arm kids with that understanding, then they are more empowered to navigate it. I think we have a student population that understands the value of college and understands the opportunity of college. But I think where we struggle is the building not only the aspiration for college, but the expectation and efficacy that they can be successful. And so many kids don't foreclose because Many kids foreclose not because they don't see the importance, but because they don't see the likelihood of them being successful in that environment.
Do you think we do enough when we say college bound to make sure that our young people understand something more than just go to college, but understand how to make a smart decision about which college, how much debt, which majors, what's going to get you the largest ROI? This is something that on this show is going to become a topic that we're going to talk more about in the coming weeks with different experts, because I'm amazed that we don't talk more about being specific when we talk to young people about college, about like, listen, some things just pay off better than other things do, which is why we have so many Black adults that are saddled with thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, in some cases $100,000 of debt for something that isn't helping them earn an awful lot.
Yeah, this is William Hayes personally talking.
Good.
Yeah,
Let's get to that.
I get the sense that culturally we have a natural resistance to restraint, right, and constraint. And in many cases, college, for those who are leaving, represents an opportunity to just be free, right? You are away from home. You have an opportunity to go study what you want to, courses that were never offered to you. And so there's this inherent freedom that comes with going to college. And we often resist the urge to constrain that freedom for students. We don't want to tell you, go major in this because it will give you a hard skill. We don't want to tell you to take this course and talk to these people and do this internship, because we want you to fully experience the freedom that comes with this opportunity like college. And so I understand where that comes from, and I understand this like resistance to constraining students exploring and being their most authentic and true self in the full breadth of exploration. However, I think we don't do a good job of saying, actually, there may be some nuts and bolts things that would allow you to both be free, but also to be set up for success post-graduation. And those are things that I think white affluent families teach their child very early, with not only the opportunity of college, but also the intent, right? The set of things you need to check off and do while you have this ecosystem of individuals that will one day lead the world. And so I think it's about doing the both and. Create the space for you to be free and explore, but also make sure you walk away with some things that you can use immediately after graduation. And this is coming from diaries of a psychology major that used to be a biology major.
I mean, listen, when I worked at Macy's years ago, one of the first things that I discovered or that I figured out was how many psychology majors were my managers at Macy's. Because, at the time I didn't have a college education, and I was looking at people with college education who were managing me. And I thought, wow, well, retail must like be a very psychological field or something. Like that must be what you do with this degree. Now, I'm making fun of that, but it does feel like we have Black people who crowd into certain low earning majors, college majors, and then pay a lot for those majors, and then spend a lot of their time, their 20s and into their 30s and beyond, paying for a thing that isn't paying off. Now, all good stuff, like all good fields. I just want to add this. I know you didn't come here to talk about this, but you and I briefly did talk about this. There is just a difference in when we send young people to college and what they major in. There's just a difference on the other side of what they come out with once they have majored in something. And if you look here, this is the 10 highest earning majors of African Americans and the 10 lowest earning majors for African Americans. And we just will honestly be underrepresented in many things that are amongst the highest paying majors. So when we say things like Black college educated person makes less than a white undereducated person, oftentimes white non-colleged people are actually still within trades that required some rigor for them to be in those trades, but they're high earning, low cost college type of programs. Even 2-year folks get into things like electrical and HVAC and other things that do pay, right? They do have payment. Meanwhile, we have lots of people with 4-year degrees on that. Look at that lower level there, lowest earning, majors there: early childhood education, human services and community organization, family and consumer services, social work, right? all good things. Like if you were going to start a brand new society today, you would need all these things that we participate in a lot, but they all happen to be very low paying. Even teachers in your field. I mean, my good homie here, my brother Sharif El-Mekki, is trying to get more of us, more Black males into teaching. At the same time, we should be talking about making sure that once they get there, that we're pushing our governors and everybody else to make sure that they can live on what they get paid for doing that very important work. But when you see a graph like this, and you know you're pushing so many young people to go into college, does this make a difference to you at all? Is this something we should be talking about with our young people?
So I think we should definitely be talking about it with our young people. I think we should be talking about it in terms of the implications. So one, I think it's a great opportunity to stop and celebrate all of the social justice warriors of people like the 8 Black Hands. You've done the great job, right? Our kids go to college and choose majors that put them in human services to support our communities, right? And so I think there's something to unpack there around those who go to college do go with an intent to come back and serve their communities. And that's something we've hammered in, right? It's cultural to us that you are going to get this so that you can do something for your community. And so we also must own what that type of message does in terms of the types of majors that our people choose. Mm-hmm. I think that's important in many cases as a counter narrative to this idea that we tell kids to go be doctors, lawyers, engineers, mathematicians, and scientists, but they come out and they go choose to be psychologists, social workers, educators. And that's not a knock, but I think for me, a comment that was made is, how do I leverage this degree to provide myself the economic stability that I want and the opportunities that I want? And I think we need to have a conversation about, when you get this particular degree, this will be its value with this set of experiences, and this is its value with another set of experiences. Mm-hmm. Me, with my psychology degree, I got to senior year. Biology seems to be a very clear path to med school or to get a doctorate in something that was going to graduate with a very linear path and outcome. Psychology didn't present that, and I didn't realize that until my senior year. And so I was really left with the options of, should I do TFA or should I go get a graduate degree? And so in some cases, this opportunity that I had at Harvard was because I did not know what I wanted to do or what I could do. And so I hadn't necessarily established those networks or had those internships to let me know, with a psychology degree, this is what you will also need, or the set of experience that you will need to leverage in order to make that degree work for you. We don't really have those conversations around the human services jobs. Most of those students walk out and take the job that their degree allows them to get, or the manager they know that will hire them, without saying, actually, this particular certification on top of that, this particular internship will lead me to this opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so I think that goes back to this kind of sequence of success in the absence of the system that you're operating in, and not fully educating kids about the opportunities and barriers within that system.
I think I have two minds of this right now, and I don't know what you think about this, but of one mind, in my own life, my pathway was through social services. I worked in social services for years as a very rewarding and meaningful part of work. Prior to doing that, very few people know this about me. Prior to doing that, I was trying to do the normal job track of every couple of years, get a better paying job with better benefits and more healthcare or whatever. And I found myself in a job that was the best paying job I had ever had, with the most benefits that I had ever had. So all should be well, right? Like, this is like the most, this is having made it as much as I could at that time. And for the record, y'all, it wasn't a lot of money. It was like $31,000, $32,000, something like that, but with full benefits, medical, dental, blah, 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 a little bit of profit sharing, and all kinds of golden handcuff type of things. And I hit a bad patch. I hit a patch where I was hating coming to work every day, and it got worse and worse and worse until, I won't go into the full story. I've told it before in other places, where more mentally I was wrong. Like, everything about me was wrong, and it had to stop. And that particular role got so bad that, well, I will tell a little bit of the story. I think I've told it before here several times, where I got called to HR, and they basically said, in a nutshell, you know how you come here every day? How about if we pay you not to do that anymore? How about we just pay you to be somewhere else doing something else or whatever it is or whatnot? That's how bad it had gotten. And I didn't know that I had fallen into that bad of a place, but that was it. So I got a year's severance to just go away. And in that year, I started doing a lot of volunteering work and community work. And I found out that one of the things that was wrong with me was that I had no meaning in my life, or no purpose in my work and in what I was attempting to do in life. And it just compounded, like, not paying attention, not seeing that as a thing, first of all, like just thinking, who cares? You're supposed to work. You just go to work, shut up, just do your job, whatever, that sort of thing. But this thing was growing in me and it killed me at some point. Anyways, in that year of volunteering through my church, I did a men's ministry. I did a job ministry, oddly enough, helping people find work. And I did a suits ministry, clothing for men that were looking for jobs, but they didn't have anything to wear, because there were a lot of women programs for that, but there were no men's ones. And I found value and purpose in that work. I wasn't getting paid to do it. I was getting paid by a corporation to not go to the corporation. So it allowed me to do something for free. And I found the mental thing that went off in my head was, man, if I could do something like this every day, I would be a happy person. And this is how God works in my life. It ended up that because of that work that I was doing, I became noticed by a social service agency that helped people find work. And they reached out to me and wanted to know how I was doing it and if I could help them with some things or whatnot. Short story is, they hired me, and that began my career in social services. And I remember being in that work, and everybody around me who would complain, I would just look at them with pity and be like, you need to go off and find your passion somewhere else and your purpose somewhere else. But I have a well to draw from. This is where I'm supposed to be. So I was in a high burnout job, but never burned out on it. Right now, I took a pay cut to do that work. The benefits weren't as fantastic, but I was happy every day. I felt free and happy because I was helping other people, and I felt like I was doing something purposeful. Me sitting here with you right now that's the lineage of me getting to this as work that we do. Helping people and wanting to put a highlight and a focus on things is where I found my purpose. For most of those years, it didn't pay well. It eventually translated into a role that I have now, where I feel very blessed and been very privileged for the role that I have right now. But that happened after a long time of working in a low. So now when I come to talk to a college class about like your majors or whatnot, and I'm thinking, yeah, I should tell you guys to do engineering. I should tell you to do something that is actually has more earnings than the thing that gave me so much meaning and purpose. Don't I sound like a liar in some ways? Don't I sound kind of like like people would say, well, Chris, in your own life, low pay work was meaningful to you.
Yeah, I think for me, it becomes about messaging to students. I want you to be happy. I want you to have joy in your life. I want you to carve out whatever life feels happy to you, that you are able to take care of yourself and take care of a family that you create. Baseline. I don't think it's about messaging to kids, go be rich, right? I think that if we're going to have a conversation that starts with go be rich and make $1 million, then that's going to be a different pathway. I think I am pushing for kids to develop a life that you want, that you can be happy, and that you can sustain yourself. For me, I find that life presents you with multiple opportunities. I think informs kind of where you land in that happiness. I would argue that I am in a position that is probably in the most nuanced and specific way the ultimate most happy position that I've been in. And I don't think I knew how to describe what I'm doing right now, where I'm doing it, and how I'm doing it, nor would I have been able to like script a full path towards this, both in my earnings, but also in my opportunity and impact. I think about my degree was in psychology, and I went to grad school to get a counseling certification, and ended up kind of deviating from that path to become a teacher. And when I think about the work that I do now, that psychology and that counseling degree is probably the most integral to my work, even more than the things I've done and checked off in terms of my education classes and teaching and learning classes. And so I do think that there is value in these sort of humanities and human services roles. It allows you to think and see people. But then my career also reflects a series of opportunities that inform kind of an upward financial trajectory. And so it's about kind of crafting that and the sum total of those pieces together. One of the things we talked about in Morehouse that was a pretty kind of well-known phrase was find something that you would do that you love so much that you would do it for free, and then do it so well that people pay you for it. And so I do think there's space for passion to drive you, but an excellence that allows people to see it and want to invest in it.
I think that's huge. And something you just said in there I hadn't thought about, but now it's clicking for me. Like what you go to college for, your major that you have when you go to college isn't the end of the road. That is just the beginning of something that helps you invent your life after that. So
Mhm.
whatever you go for, there's the possibility of ending up in a role like the one that I have or the one that you have, that no one could have counseled us that we were going to do this type of work, because it just, in some ways, in some cases, it just didn't exist yet, to do the type of work that we do and the type of role, and to get the benefits from doing emerging work. So what I have is work that has emerged out of somewhere. I don't think a high school counselor could have prepared me for it. But being able to have experiences and some educational foundation, whether it's in human services or whether it's in community work or working with people in any way, shape, or form, could set you up at some point to luck up on the destination where you really want to get to, some form of work that has deep meaning and deep purpose in your life, that you wouldn't have seen yourself, that came out of the invention of your unique combination of experiences and educational inputs that you had. And I think that is something we should focus more on, the invention part with our young people, telling them, like, listen, I can teach you how to get the education. I can teach you how to get the certification. I can teach you how to pass through a gate. But what I can't do for you is to cook that all up into something that's uniquely beneficial for you, that you really are going to enjoy doing as work every day.
Yep.
And I think that might require us to pull in stories, talk to more people who actually had to invent the job that they have for themselves, and study those people, and then teach our young people what you learned when you studied people who invented their own job and invented their own way.
My job actually came from, so while I was in grad school, my counseling hours were done with a group of high school students. I had 21 young men who had failed 10th grade that I was mentoring and counseling.
Mm.
I was taking a course that required us to come up with an intervention that could increase the college going rates of low income urban youth. I wrote that paper, and my theory of change was that a course that was offered throughout the day would allow students to have access to this information and support them. My then principal of the school I was working at read the paper and said, I would like for this program to come to my school and I'd like for you to teach it. And so that was really just in me kind of having this idea and having the right opportunity, and someone to see and invest in that. And so for me, it becomes about what is the portfolio of experiences and kind of generalizable skills and knowledge that I can build a full kind of comprehensive, this is Will Hayes to the world, so that I'm prepared and ready to offer up something when the opportunity presents itself. And I think that's something we don't often talk to kids about. What are the things that you can arm yourself with that you can be prepared for the opportunity you don't yet know exists, right?
Mm.
So you're kind of building a more complex and comprehensive profile. I think for me, I could kind of see I wanted to lead something. I could see I wanted to work in schools and organizations. And so it became about, like, what are the things that I can do? Who are the people I can connect to that allow me to advance in a path that doesn't seem clear right now?
Yeah, what gave you the confidence to think that, like, you should put that on paper?
Honestly, I didn't put it on paper with the intent of, like, creating a job. I just put it on paper with the understanding, like, this is something I think can be impactful. I think it's something that can be significant and create change. And in many cases, I tell people I've never really chased the promotion. I've never chased the
Mm-hmm.
position. I
Mm-hmm.
chased the impact that I wanted to make. And I did that. And people saw me doing that work and came and found me to come do it somewhere else, to do it in a different position. And so even folks that I'm like counseling and mentoring in terms of leadership, I'm saying, what is your point of impact? What is the impact you want to make? Do that then, right? I don't need a title to do half the things that I want to do. What I need to be doing it and be seen doing it, and then be elevated in that way, or see where the opportunity exists and bring it to the table.
I'd love to see a large scale study on people like you, right? Like, I think we study failure so much. I think we study deficit so much. I think we study lack and lacking, and you're in want of something. And I think because we study that so much, we've become experts on awfulizing our Black people. And we awfulize them to death before they even have time to live, right? We awfulize Black people early, at the earliest junctures, which kills our entire creativity about what a Black life could be and what Black life is worth, and the value of independent Black life. Like there's a value in people like you that I don't think we study enough, and we should. I think part of it is people like you, and I'm putting this on you in some ways, are not, I don't think, always used to being the subject, right? You're used to being the object, but not the subject. And I think we need to study what made you creative, what gave you the inspiration, not the inspiration, the confidence, the intellectual confidence, to be able to say, I have ideas to myself, and I'm going to put them on paper. I'm going to like put them somewhere.
And how do we not take away the inherent agency that kids have despite the systemic challenges they face, right? And so for me, good, bad, or indifferent, I've always kind of had a rational understanding of the world around me. And many of my motivations were driven by the fact that I watched my mother and my grandmother and my family go through life. And I knew there were two things that I didn't want. I didn't want to be miserable. I didn't want to be bound and restricted. And I didn't want to be poor. I'll be very transparent about that. And so for me, those two things were at the forefront. I don't want to be miserable and I don't want to be poor. And so I crafted out a world for myself that was like, this is the experience that I need to guarantee both those things to be true. And the moment I feel like one of those things is being threatened, or I'm going to find myself in that position, I need to recalibrate and do something. And so I never denied my own agency. I think where I've had to resist that, particularly in this position and in working with Black boys, there's a resistance to acknowledge the agency that students have and the codes of a horrible, oppressive system. Those codes still exist, and those things that are designed to oppress, you can navigate to, through, or around those without kind of adopting this bootstraps mentality that you can, if you do these things, it's guaranteed success. No, I think it's about understanding the system. There are juncture points where if you do this, it won't be successful, and it won't be of your own accord. And working your way and navigating around all those both opportunities and landmines that exist within the system. And I don't think we do enough work of, I would argue that those who are in similar positions to me in similar mindsets, in many cases have carried with them this ongoing agency to impact my own outcomes and a hyper awareness of both the opportunities and landmines within the system.
Which is really the kit. It's the two things. One, understanding your agency is not sufficient. If you're not hip to the game that you're in. Right. You can say I have all this agency in the world, but you're in the middle of a corrupt system, a system that's going to corrupt your pathway, and you're ignoring all the corruption. You're ignoring all the ways in which it's meant to take you off your on-ramp. Right. And that, to me, I think is the part that you're adding here. I have been resistant to all the agency talk, not because I don't believe in agency, but because I believe it's short-sighted to not understand the game that you're in. Right. So you're adding that second part.
And I think the fear is also that the moment I have a conversation around agency, I give space to the system to no longer acknowledge that the system is unfair and built against me. And I think we have to hold those things true, that I have agency and I can see that you have put a roadblock in front of me. And I could sit here and talk about the roadblock, and I could name the roadblock and dissect the roadblock, or I could use my agency to see and jump over the roadblock, right? Or to see and go around, or to see and go in a different direction. I think it's about having a more nuanced conversation around our agency to interrogate and navigate an inequitable system without, absolving the system and its oppressors and white privilege as a part of that. So I often tell people some of these conversations, my fear has always been the moment I have this type of conversation, particularly in front of white people, there's a fear that I absolve you of the responsibility of this system. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it is not flawed and wrong and charged against Black and brown people in low-income areas. I am saying that Black and brown people in low-income areas do have a certain level of agency to see that thing and to do something about it, to get around it and over it, and to hopefully get to a position where you can remove that barrier altogether. I think even in my career, I have accepted that there were some positions I was in that I can't control or change this thing. I can, however, move in such a way that allows me to get to the position that does allow me to move that thing. And so it became about not just kind of accepting my role and accepting the society that I was in, or ignoring the rules of operation within that system. But let me show you what you need to see. Let me show the system what it needs to get the algorithm to get to that position. And then once I'm there, I can do something about the barrier because now I have a greater position of authority.
That was a great place to end. I appreciate you, brother, for coming on today. For everybody listening and watching, this has been Dr. William Hayes. Has been our guest today, leader of Boys Latin, but leader of so many other things. We're going to keep talking. We're going to have you back on because I think you unpacked like 4 different topics in here that need further discussion. So
absolutely looking forward to it.
For all of you listening, please share the show. This has been another episode of Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you're freer than you were when we began this show today. We appreciate you as always.